Hi, friends. I'm your host, Rye Russell, and with me, joining the Indie Creator Award family today, I am really excited to introduce a Maine native, James Sunshine. James is a producer, director, writer, and filmmaker. His work has included television's MasterChef, Project Runway, Hell's Kitchen, and he's joining us today to talk about his newest project, Safer at Home, the coronavirus movie, written and directed by James. James, welcome to Indie Creator Awards.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to sit down with you and chat about it.
Well, we are always excited to meet filmmakers, but what really excites me right now is that in 2020, there's been so much chaos in the world. Never mind, the interruption to the film industry. And so before we really jump in, I would love to learn a little bit about your process and the inspiration for making a film like this.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's actually so I was actually going into production on a separate film that I wrote last year. It was a thriller film called Headlighting, and we were putting all the pieces together. We got our crew together. We cast it in January of this past year. We were in pre-production. We had all the shot lists. We had the locations. We had everything, and our plan was to shoot it in April. And then March rolled around and everything got derailed. And the consensus of the people on that film project were like, okay, well, things will open up again by June, right? And then as time goes on, things don't open up. And I kind of realized this film isn't going to happen anymore. But I still wanted to make something. We had one of our backers, our financial backers, drop out of that project. So we lost half of our budget too. And but I always kind of look at the bright side of things though. And I looked at my team and I was like, well, we still have half of our budget. And I was like, what could we do that is actually possible to film right now? So I wrote a new film while in quarantine about the coronavirus pandemic itself, and that needed half the budget and was only going to be two actors inside a house. And because it took place during the pandemic, they could be paranoid about the virus and be socially distant, So I took a crack at it. I wrote a script in a really short amount of time. I was like, is this even any good? And I started sending it out to people and they said, James, this is better than the other script we were going to shoot. And I was like, oh, really? So then it was kind of like a no-brainer. And from that point, we had to get approval from the unions because we wanted to use union talent, which was important to us so that the quality of the film would be really good. And that took a little bit of time to get union approval, but we got it. And in the end, we were one of the first, if not the first, union approved independent films to shoot in Los Angeles the entire summer.
That's incredible. First of all, for those listening, making a film is like starting a business. It is an entrepreneurial venture and journey.
Yeah, 100% is. I was joking with a friend about that too, because I've even put my own money into this as well to make sure and see that it succeeds. And I was talking with my friend. He's like, yeah, that's no different than a small business owner putting his life savings or his own money into starting a business because you're looking to make a profit off of it,
Absolutely. And businesses have had to pivot in this pandemic, just like the film industry, just like filmmakers. And one of the main differences is in a film, your business might be 3 weeks, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then it's your entire life promoting that work. And so you really put a lot of yourself into it because it's evergreen. It's going to last forever. And so you try to make it as good as possible. Tell me a little bit about some of the changes on the set. Kind of take me through that process.
Oh my God. Well, I was joking with my cast and crew while we were in the process of making it. I was like, producing and directing a film when we're no longer in a pandemic is going to be insanely easy. Because like shooting during the pandemic probably doubled my workload in terms of the things that I had to do and the things that I had to prepare for. So thinking about doing that outside of a pandemic now, I'm like, wait, how did I ever think that would be hard in the first place? But yeah, so what we had to do was, I mean, first of all, there was the quarantine. We had to make sure that nobody on the cast and crew was going out. We even started that quarantine 3 weeks prior to production because we were so paranoid. You know, we were like, if we shoot half this thing and then somebody tests positive, then we got to shut it down and we're losing money. So we started quarantining weeks before we started shooting. We started testing weeks before we started shooting. We did our first round of tests 3 weeks before we started shooting because we were like, okay, we want to know for certain. If we do our first test the day of the shoot and somebody's positive, it's like, well, what did we do all this prep work for? And then the other one that I was really proud of, the third one, was we actually got sponsorship from a PPE company. My producer, Larry Layfield, got into the PPE business as soon as all this COVID stuff hit. And he got into the business of selling PPE to sets, which was a brilliant move by him, having the foresight to know that just how bad this was going to be. And him and I partnered up. He was producing the film with me, and he was like, "I got you covered. We're going to have everything. You got your N95 masks, you've got your your hand sanitizers, your gloves." And his company even had a robot come into set one day. It's like a robot. It looks like what are those like little vacuum things, like Roombas, right?
Oh, sure.
It's like a really tall Roomba that just goes around the set, just spraying antibacterial stuff into the air.
Amazing.
It was wild. We had our bases covered so much. I think we were safer and had our bases covered more than a lot of like big $1 million professional sets, honestly.
Absolutely. I was telling you we've done a few projects this year, and the amount of protocols that go into it now is insane. But one of the things that I noticed was production now versus even 5 years ago. We needed to be more creative and more resourceful with the resources we did have. Do you think that, and you tell me if you ran any leaner than you would have on a production before, but what I've noticed is that maybe, production will be leaner going forward as well.
I certainly think that's a possibility. One of the things that we had to do is our entire cast and crew was 8 people, because one of the things we had to navigate around was there was this order in Los Angeles that you couldn't have gatherings larger than 10 people, you know? So it's like, well, how do you make a movie with less than 10 people? So we found a way to do that. I wore so many hats. I wrote, I direct, I produce, I was the art director, I was the AD, I did all these things. My buddy Jeremy was the cinematographer who basically ran that entire, camera and electrical department. He
Right.
brought on one person to help him. Then one of the people we had there was a sound guy who basically did all of the sound by himself. And then we were required by the Screen Actors Guild to hire a health and safety supervisor who was familiar with COVID, and whose basically his job was to professionally stand there and go, "Hey, you're standing too close," or "Hey, put your mask on." Um, so we were going to have 7 people, but we had to hire him. So that made it 8. And yeah, I can definitely see film sets being a lot leaner in the future. I know for my sake, having now seen that it's possible to do it with such a small amount of people, makes me wonder how much I would really, even in a non-pandemic world, open up the crew to be that big. I mean, obviously you'd get a better product. You'd get a better product if you had somebody who was specifically paying attention to the art direction rather than juggling all those hats. But luckily we didn't have a lot of art direction in our film.
And that's what I mean, entrepreneurship at its finest. Small business owner might be the cook, the server, the bartender, and placing the food orders. And so you really kind of brought all of this together. What did your friends and family say to you or think when you told them that you were going to put together this film?
They were not surprised, because I've been trying to do this for the longest time. Like I told you, I had another film that was going to be going into production before this. So basically all my friends and family, they're content with like, oh yeah, this is what James is going to do. There's no way to talk him out of it. I mean, I've wanted to be a filmmaker since as far back as I can remember. And I think people stopped trying to talk me out of it when I was probably like 19 or so. So it's been a long time since people have tried to talk me out of it. And once COVID hit, and I decided to keep going with it anyways. I explained to people the benefits of having a finished product and being able to do this, and how it can give us leverage with distributors and all that. And everybody was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Just be safe.
Absolutely. And leverage with distributors is never an easy thing. And being on the
No.
retail side of film and understanding distribution to consumer and having some background in production to distribution, one of the biggest things that every filmmaker is hoping for is some level of traction or enthusiasm behind the film. And you must have started to receive quite a bit of enthusiasm for this project.
Yeah. It's kind of nice, because if this pandemic had never happened and we shot the other film, I mean, it would have been a good film, but nobody would have really cared about it. It would have just been another film in a sea of independent films that get made every year. But one of the reasons we shot this is because we realized there is such a lack of content, a drought of content in the industry right now, that if you can have a finished product, not a pitch for an idea or a script, but an actual finished film, that it gives you so much leverage with distributors who are just dying. They just, because nobody's giving them stuff. So we've had articles run about us. We had an article run about us in the Hollywood Reporter, basically just talking about our story, about how we do this. And usually those publications don't run stories about films unless you have a distributor and a trailer. But the fact that we wrapped production a couple weeks ago, our story in and of itself is big enough that that these publications are running stories about it. And the thing that surprised me the most was, after we wrapped production a few weeks ago, we put the film on IMDb. We made our IMDb page, and we didn't even promote it. We just created the IMDb page, and we started getting emails from distributors the next day saying, "Hey, I saw you produce this movie. We'd love to take a watch of the rough cut when it's ready." And me and my team looked at each other. We were like, how did these people, did you reach out to them? No. Did you reach out to them? No. How do they know? And the truth of the matter is, distributors are just like, they're just searching through IMDb now. When they see a new post, oh, some movie, oh, it wrapped production? How is that possible? Let's reach out to them. So yeah, we're hoping that we can get a good deal off of this, and that we have the leverage that we need, that usually 99.9% of the time, under any other non-COVID circumstances, you wouldn't be able to get.
Definitely. And marketing budgets are sometimes as significant as the production budget itself.
Yes. Luckily, yeah, this movie kind of markets itself. We put a little bit of money down, but yeah, we're lucky that the story in and of itself, it's so funny when people talk to us about it, they don't even ask us what the movie is about. They ask us how we shot it. What the content of the movie has come second, which is great. But on the other hand, the content of the movie is really good too. So
that's going to be kind of the curse of wearing so many hats in this film. You're, as a filmmaker and producer, you're like, yes, this is getting attention. But as a writer, you might be like, hey, wait, this story's very badass. You really need to look at this.
Yeah. Well, people will talk about the story when the movie drops. When a trailer drops, once people have seen it. Because let me tell you, the story in this film is off the wall. It's crazy. We took all the themes and the craziness of the world that happened this entire year, not just with COVID, but everything that's been happening. And we just wrote something that is just the ultimate, political and social satire of the world today. And it's gonna offend people. It's gonna entertain people. It's gonna make people laugh. But I guarantee you, it's the type of movie that when people watch it, they're going to remember it. And I know the discussion about the content of the film is going to happen at some point.
That's incredible. Well, James, what is the best way for the Indie Creator Award audience to stay connected with you and stay up to date on this film?
Well, I'm on social media. My name is James Sunshine. There's not a lot of other James Sunshines in the world. So if you search for me, you'll probably find me. But this film, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Just search us, Safer at Home, the coronavirus movie.
Amazing. And of course, We will include all of those links to follow James in our show notes. Be sure to check out our blog at indiecreatororawards.com. And James, of course, I want to thank you for joining me on Indie Creator Awards today. And a huge amount of gratitude, of course, goes out to all of you joining us. And be sure to be on the lookout for Safer at Home, the coronavirus movie by James Sunshine. And be sure to check back and connect with all of us as we continue to spotlight these amazing creators that continue to produce amazing work, even when the challenge has never been more difficult. We'll see you next time on Indie Creator Awards.